Rankings, awards, and projected win totals. Yeah, it's that time of year. We got that plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 26, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, into another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. Show grows each and every day, even in the offseason, because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. You want to check him out on Twitter, you can, at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well, at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, we've got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. And as we normally do, we'll close out the show hearing from you. Calls, texts, really good stuff. A lot of great feedback off all the conversation we've been having. You'll hear from you, Raider Nation, in segment number 3. Segment number 2, you'll hear from my guy John Kosko from PFF, Pro Football Focus. Talked about him and his article that he had on PFF on Friday's show when we were talking about ranking all 32 starting quarterbacks. So I had an opportunity to catch up with him on my radio show on Friday afternoon. So you'll hear just a little snippet of that conversation when it has to do with Geno Smith and where he was ranked. And if you missed Friday's episode, he had him ranked 10th out of the top 32 starting quarterbacks in the National Football League. So, of course, that caught my attention. You'll hear that breakdown. Segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes, and really it's just some superlatives, offseason awards, some projected win totals, stuff like that we'll jump into. Matter of fact, we'll jump into it right after I shout out Memorial Day. Today is Memorial Day. A lot of folks are off work. A lot of folks are going to be barbecuing, doing whatever they want to do, having the family come over. But we do have to remember what Memorial Day is all about. I always like to shout out all to the servicemen and servicewomen that are out there that have made it possible for guys like me to be in the position that I'm in now, to sit behind a microphone and talk about football for a living. Like, that's awesome. Love it, right? And that's only because of the servicemen and servicewomen that we have out there that defend our freedoms each and every day. But on Memorial Day, obviously, we think back and we all reflect on the ones that we lost that were out there giving the ultimate sacrifice. So I do want to shout them out. Anybody who has someone in their family that they lost as they were being a serviceman or servicewoman, we shout you out. We appreciate you, and we just thank you for everything that you have done as a family to those that we lost. Just because, again, their ultimate sacrifice is also your ultimate sacrifice. So we definitely want to pay that forward. We want to shout you out and remember what the reason is why a lot of people had a 3-day weekend. A lot of people like myself have off. Like, I don't have any radio shows to do today, and that's due to Memorial Day, right? And so, again, just want to make sure we shout out and don't forget the reason why we have days like today. Now, I'll go ahead and jump right into some little information that I've been gathering, collecting. It's that kind of year. If you look at the calendar, it's the end of May, so it's obviously not going to be a ton of news and notes going on, but found this to be pretty interesting on SportsCenter on Friday. As a matter of fact, Friday afternoon, I was actually doing my radio show, and I looked up and I saw ESPN talking about the Raiders, and, well, that's been happening quite a bit. So I try to bring any kind of information that I hear, especially from the national media. I try to bring it to the show because there's a narrative out there that, one, the media doesn't talk about the Raiders, and 2, it's always negative. But what I've been bringing to the show is showing that that's not actually true, and there's a lot of positivity and a lot of good, positive energy towards the Raiders right now, especially with this new staff in place led by John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll. So Bill Barnwell, Mina Kimes, and Jeremy Fowler were all on SportsCenter on Friday afternoon, and they were handing out superlatives and talking about the most impactful player or even most impactful person on a bunch of AFC teams. And that's when that caught my attention, that they were talking about the Raiders. So here's what Barnwell, Kimes, and Jeremy Fowler had to say about the Silver and Black. Bill Barnwell leads off, giving his superlative to the Raiders.
The AFC West and a team that's made a bunch of changes during the offseason. What's the superlative for them?
Let's go positive with this one. Most likely to improve the Las Vegas Raiders, because there's 3 things we see in teams who make massive year-to-year jumps. The Raiders hit all 3. Obviously, upgrade at quarterback. They bring in Geno Smith. Upgraded head coach, Pete Carroll, of course, the legendary former Seahawks coach. And then something that with the didn't really go for well for them last year that's going to improve their fumble recovery rate. They only recovered 24% of the fumbles in their games last year, lowest rate for any team since 2011. That is going to improve. There's no ability to bounce on the football once it hits the ground. And so if that takes a step forward for the Raiders, you improve their quarterback play, the coaching play. That division might be tough to say playoff berth, but could they double their win total and be competitive in the AFC West? Absolutely.
Mina, a lot of new additions out there in Vegas. However, who do you think is going to be the most impactful?
Got to go with the quarterback, Geno Smith. Going from their situation last year to Geno, I would argue, is the single biggest upgrade in all of football. Yes, Geno threw too many interceptions under pressure last year, but he was playing behind a porous offensive line, and despite that, still had the second highest on-target percentage in the NFL behind Joe Burrow. Accuracy is his calling card, and I think the Raiders are going to benefit from that in a huge way and really feel how dramatic the upgrade is under center.
And Jeremy, what have you been hearing about Geno Smith and his impact in Vegas so far?
I'm hearing Geno Smith is loving to go to work every day, that he and Pete Carroll have serious chemistry, that he's upstairs in Carroll's office all the time. They really had a chemistry from their Seattle days, and they have picked up right where they left off. And so Geno Smith is trying to just get a chemistry also with Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty. That's going to be one of the best duos in the league if the Raiders have their way. That's what they're hopeful for under Chip Kelly's offense. So Geno Smith has to make that work. Word out of Las Vegas is the defense has been a little bit ahead in the OTA workouts, but Geno's just getting his footing, so they should take flight here soon.
Bill Barnwell, Mina Kimes, Jeremy Fowler right there. Just a couple minutes of the conversation that they had on SportsCenter on Friday afternoon. Bill Barnwell, most likely to improve. And it's funny, I had reached out to him trying to get him on the show, but him and his wife just had a baby, so he said, I want to go on the show. I really do, but, we're trying to have as much time, with the baby. And I was like, hey, man, you ain't got to explain that. Go do your thing, right? We'll catch up later. But you heard what he had to say right there about the Raiders being most likely to improve. Now, the caveat to that is, well, they play in the AFC West, so it's still the toughest division in football, and it's not going to be easy to all of a sudden go from being a worst to first team because of the other teams in the division. But most likely to improve is what Bill Barnwell said. Mina Kimes said Geno Smith is going to be the most impactful player. She's been very high on Geno Smith, and it's funny, as we were talking about starting quarterbacks on Friday's show, and the fact that Sam Darnold is now the starting quarterback in Seattle, and he's ranked 26 according to Pro Football Focus, and Geno Smith is ranked 10th. I'll take that trade-off any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And it's funny, I've been hearing some people, not from the Locked On Seahawks side of things, but I've seen some people that do Seahawks-type shows saying, man, I'm so glad that the Raiders got Geno Smith as opposed to us, man, we dodged a bullet. I'm like, really? Really? You got Sam Darnold, and I get it. Look, you can get out of that contract. That contract's not, like a daunting contract, but really? Sam Darnold? Yeah, I'll take Geno Smith. I think that the Raiders definitely got the better end of that bargain. For me, I think if I was handing out a superlative, and I talked about this on my radio show on Friday, it'd be most likely to caught everyone's attention throughout the course of the year. What do I mean by that? I feel like the Raiders at the end of the 2025 season, regardless of how many wins they're going to have, I feel like that they're going to be that team that people say, you know what? You better watch out for them in 2026. What they've got cooking there in Las Vegas, they got something special. What Pete Carroll's got going, what Tom Brady, what John Spytek, what they have there, oh yeah, they've got something. You better watch out for them. They're not going to be easy dub on anybody's schedule. That's how I think the conversation is going to go at the end of the 2025 season. Now, what does that mean for win total? I don't know. I've been as a matter of fact, I feel comfortable with 8 wins, and that would double what the Raiders did in 2024. I think that's where they're going to be, right around 8 wins. But like I said, I feel like there's going to be a lot of conversation about the Raiders. Better watch out for them. Here they come. My most impactful is not a player. My most impactful is Pete Carroll, the head coach. I think that just what he's trying to build, the culture he's trying to establish, what he's trying to do. We always talk about culture, and every coach wants to create their culture. This one is a proven track record of being successful. So I think Pete Carroll is actually going to be the most impactful person, not necessarily player, but a person for the Raiders. And then, as far as win totals go, projected win totals for the AFC West, my good friend Cynthia Freeland from NFL Network, she also does a show on YouTube called The Numbers Game. She's very heavy into the analytics. Like everything that I don't do, she does, right? Crunching the numbers, going through, running a bunch of simulations, and she does a fantastic job on it. So she did a win total projection for all of the AFC. Well, obviously, I only care about the AFC West, and I'll just go through them really quickly and then tell you what she said about the Raiders. So for the Chiefs, she still has them as the AFC West champs, but only at 11.2 wins. That's the win total projection. So there you go. Only 11 basic wins that she's looking at for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I've said it many times that I think Kansas City takes a slight step back this year. 11 wins, it's barely double digits, right? And so I feel like that is just kind of about right. The Broncos, she has in second place at 9.5. Those are the projected total wins for the Denver Broncos, according to Cynthia Freeland. Chargers right behind the Broncos at 9.3, and then the Raiders roll in at 7.4. So almost 7.5, right? I've been as a matter of fact, about 8 wins. So I feel like that's pretty par for the course. She goes on to say Pete Carroll and Geno Smith will have a chance to significantly outpace this projection total if they can win one or ideally both of their games in week 3 at the Commanders and week 4 versus the Bears. Las Vegas' toughest 3-game stretch right now forecast to be weeks 14 through 16 when they host the Broncos, then travel to face the Eagles and the Texans. So there's a little quick breakdown from Cynthia Freeland, but 7.4. And again, that's just about right. If you can be at 7.4, if that's what they're expecting you to win, right? And I'm saying 8, there's still, you can win a game, you can shock someone, win a game, and like the Raiders did last year in week 2 when they beat the Baltimore Ravens, and then they, peed all down their leg when they ended up at Allegiant Stadium to open up the 2024 season at home, and it was a terrible loss to the Carolina Panthers. That was just awful, right? They had an opportunity to really build some great momentum after beating Baltimore on the road in Baltimore, and then you go home, first game of the season at the crib, and you lose to Carolina the way they did. They had just benched their quarterback. I mean, they were in a bad position, and here they go to Vegas and beat the Raiders. So I don't think that Pete Carroll, going back to him being the most impactful person for the Raiders, will allow this team to have that kind of moment, right? Get high off their own supply, like get too high off their own press clippings, right? Oh, hey, they did well. Man, look at the Raiders. They're doing really well. And then all of a sudden they show up and they think that, oh, that's an easy dub just because we showed up. You can't have those type of performances anymore. Good teams don't do that. Good teams don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe like the Raiders did against the Carolina Panthers in 2024, and I don't think Pete Carroll is going to let them do that. Coming up in segment number 2, Pro Football Focus rankings of the top 32 starters ahead of 2025 season. John Kosko, he's the guy who penned that for PFF. Got an opportunity to catch up with him. You'll hear what he had to say about Geno Smith at number 10. You'll hear that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors here on the show, and that is Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's very easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control over your finances. And it's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and actually start building your wealth. That's what it's all about. And if you're on the go a lot, you're eating out a lot, you're online shopping a lot, you're entertaining a lot, right? Or you're being entertained a lot of times you look up and you're like, man, that money went quick, fast, and in a hurry. So right now, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. LOCKEDON NFL, all one word, for half off your first year. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast on this Memorial Day. Want to kind of put a bow on the conversation that we had on Friday about PFF and their rankings of all the top 32 starters in the National Football League, where they have 7 total tiers. Geno Smith came in tier 3A. Solid starters who have flashed high-end play. And he came in at number 10. And I, just like I said on Friday's show, I was kind of surprised. I didn't really know where they were going to rank him. I didn't know how PFF really felt about Geno Smith. I know I've been kind of hot and cold on Geno Smith, especially when I first started thinking about the idea of maybe him being the Raiders quarterback. And I was like, but the more that you do research, the more that you start, talking to other people and you start looking around and seeing what he's actually accomplished, especially with Pete Carroll, you start feeling a lot better about the situation. So John Kosko from PFF.com wrote this about Geno. Few would have pegged Smith to grade as the 6th best passer in the NFL over the past 2 seasons. But here we are. In fact, his 85.8 passer grading in that span is just 0.2 points shy of Patrick Mahomes. After being traded for a 3rd-round pick this offseason, Smith should enjoy an improved offensive line, but a downgrade in receiving weapons. He protects the football, has a knack for generating big-time throws. So that was according to John Kosko from PFF. FanDuel.com. So, of course, I wanted to make sure I further extended this conversation as opposed to just reading it and trying to interpret it for, whatever I wanted to interpret or whatever I felt like the real narrative was. So I wanted to reach out and get John on the radio show to really kind of explain the whole rankings, how he comes up with the rankings, 1 through 32, and then further expand a little bit when it comes to Geno Smith. So here's just a few minutes of the conversation I had with John Kosko for PFF talking about the top 32 starters ahead of the 2025 season, the piece that he put out for PFF. Check it out.
I think the criteria is I based this off of our PFF grades, right? So I grade all these quarterbacks every throw, not just me, but we at PFF do this, and I'm one of the guys that do it. And so I know exactly what goes into the grading formula and how these grades kind of shake out. So I use that as my basis, because when you do this over the course of a year, over 10 years, which is what we've, 15 years of what we've done at PFF, you kind of get a good idea of the quality of a player, of the quarterback they are. And, for like Geno Smith and these other quarterbacks that are in this tier that I have, that he grades pretty close to the top. And, like you said in your introduction, where he's just a couple of points, percentage points off of Patrick Mahomes, the quality of play that he's had over the past couple of seasons has been really excellent. He was surrounded by a really poor offensive line at Seattle. Obviously had good weapons there, but really, he had to make a lot of his own. And so, I use the grade as a basis. There's personal preference in terms of the style of quarterback they are, and the context of what their the supporting cast was and everything like that. So that's kind of the way I came about with these rankings and how I placed everybody. And I would say you look at this tier, I have a 3A tier and a 3B tier. Those guys in these tiers are really close to each other. So if somebody wanted to argue for the most hate I've gotten on Twitter so far is Dak Prescott. If you wanted to argue Dak Prescott at 12, I wouldn't be blush at that too much. So, but that's how I came about these rankings.
Yeah, you got Dak Prescott right now at number 17, and that's tier 3B. There's a handful of quarterbacks there like Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, C.J. Stroud, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence. They're all in that category. Even Tua is in that category as well. When you came up with this and you realized that Geno was at 10, did that catch you off guard? Did that surprise you, or did you feel like that was kind of par for the course, what you expected?
When I compiled these, I looked at his grade and I knew his grade was really good. And basically, when I came about this, and I obviously took some insight from the other people at PFF that grade these quarterbacks, and I didn't realize how liked he was at PFF, among my peers and my coworkers. So basically, I put him up there because of that he had a lot of love here at PFF, and I think it was a little bit, I guess, a little surprised that I had him that high because I think. You talk about a couple of years ago, he was a guy that was just a journeyman backup quarterback that was failed top end of the second round quarterback, comes into Seattle and all of a sudden starts lighting it up in Seattle. Obviously doesn't have quite the team success that they're looking for, but from an individual standpoint, I mean, he's been excellent as a quarterback. And, when you talk about these quarterbacks in that tier, I mean, they need help around them. They're not the types that are going to be the Patrick Mahomes that can take a team to obviously 3 straight Super Bowls and do all the type of stuff that he does. But these are quarterbacks that need help, and I don't think he's had quite the supporting cast, and especially for an offensive line, that he's needed. So I think, it was a little bit of surprise that I had him that high in terms of at the end of the day. But again, I know the quality of play that he can do and produce. So it's just a little bit of a surprise, I suppose.
With that being said, in the piece, you talked about the offensive line being an upgrade, receiving core being a little bit of a downgrade, and that's fine. But I did want to ask, what do you think Ashton Genty as a running back in a running game that we all expect Pete Carroll to really lean heavily on, especially with Chip Kelly as the OC? How much could that help Geno in the passing game?
It should help. I think these quarterbacks need complementary pieces around them to take pressure off of their shoulders so that they can trust their playmakers. They can turn around and hand off the ball and know that they're not going to be put into third and long type of situations. Obviously, one of the knocks that Pete Carroll has over the course of his career is that he does tend to lean on the run game a bit too much, and then you rely on third and long type of situations, or just the quarterback to really thrive in that late down situation. But, if Genty is the guy that he was drafted to be, the next Christian McCaffrey or Barry Sanders or whatever it may be of running back that can elevate an offense, they should be able to stay ahead of the chains and not be in those third and long situations and, be more in the third and medium where you're asking him to make a little bit easier of types of throws. But he's a guy that, I loved him coming out of college. He set all sorts of PFF records in college for the running back position, broken tackles, yards after contact, yards per carry, all that type of stuff. He's been phenomenal. So I think he if he comes into the NFL and can do what he did in college, it obviously helped a tremendous amount for your quarterback.
Good stuff right there, I thought, from John Kosko from PFF.com. And look, this is the time of year where you're going to get a lot of rankings, just like we talked about in segment number 1, where you're going to get awards, superlatives, right? You're going to get projected win totals, all that good stuff. You're going to get that at this time of year, right? There's not a whole lot of moving and shaking. Of course, there's a little bit more of OTAs going on. The Raiders will be participating in some OTAs later on this week where coordinators will be talking and a few of the players will be talking, and then they'll have a mandatory minicamp, and then they're going to break. So around June 10th through 12th is when they have mandatory minicamp, and then it's going to be pretty quiet. There'll be some transitions here and there, transactions, I should say. A couple players signed, a couple players released, whatever the case may be, but it won't be a whole lot of activity. But that's what it is. The NFL calendar, this is how it moves, and so you'll start to see and start to hear a lot more of these different rankings from teams to positions. Like John told me that his next piece that he was putting out was top 32 cornerbacks, or the best cornerbacks across the National Football League. And I'm interested to see that one because, well, I know Jacorian Bennett's going to be penciled in there, but who else do the Raiders have as far as cornerbacks, starting cornerbacks? We know about Jacorian Bennett, so I'm interested to see what he has on that. But really good stuff, really solid stuff from John Kosko from PFF.com, talking all things Geno Smith, and also talked about how the rankings, he even came up with those rankings. But we want to hear from you. Your calls and texts are next at 707-654-4693, the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. We'll hear from you. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start off with Vince in Fresno, the 559. He's calling to talk about the Raiders as an organization, his excitement level that he has right now for the team moving forward. Here he is, Vince in Fresno.
What's going on, Q? It's Vince out of Fresno again. Haven't called in a while, but I've been keeping up with the podcast. Just got to say I love it, but I'm calling to talk about, how excited I am as a Raider fan to see how this organization is going and where it's going. Been a fan ever since I've been born. I'm only 26, so all I've seen is just not even mediocrity, just, a bad franchise. And for the first time, I can actually say this franchise is actually doing the right things. We got a lot of great young players that we can build around now with Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty. We even have Jackson Howard-Johnson, which I love him at center. And I'm just glad that, we're not overspending on these flashy players that are not really going to help us win. We're actually just building and building and building. So whether we win 6 games this year, I'm happy because I know John Spytek and Pete Carroll are going to keep on continue doing the right thing. But to be honest, I think this year, I can see us winning 8 games, 10 at most. But it's going to be a tough division with Bo Nix, with Justin Herbert, and with Patrick Mahomes. So it's just going to be a dogfight. Appreciate your podcast, Q. Keep on doing what you do, Raider Nation. Thank you.
Vince, thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. And there's no doubt that the division is tough, right? It's very easily could be the toughest division in football. But and it would be crazy if we didn't share a little bit of excitement. I think that, I'm trying to make sure that we don't get too excited, too far ahead of ourselves. And, oh, man, this team is going to, go win 10, 11, 12 games. They're going to go win the AFC West. I don't want to get crazy like that. But, and you heard the win total projection by Cynthia Freeland in segment number 1, right? 7.4. I felt like that's right. You get around 8 wins. That's a good positive first year. Again, especially in a very tough division. If you're in another division in football, that's a different conversation. But, man, the AFC West is no joke. But thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider Nation Mason. He said, what's up, Q? Raider Nation Mason out the 406. I'm keeping this one short. Just want to update on a player that I heard a big report on, but nothing since. What's up with Colton Miller? Is he at OTAs or is he a no-show amid the contract disputes? Thanks, Q. Love what you do. Raiders. That's Raider Nation Mason. And thanks so much for the text. And, yeah, Colton Miller's been there. He's been there. He's been participating during OTAs. I don't know where they are as far as the contract negotiations. If there's any contract negotiations going on, this staff could very easily say, hey, man, you're under contract for another year. You don't have any guaranteed money. We'll worry about it when we worry about it, but, you got to be here to make it happen. And Colton doesn't seem like the guy, and I don't know him personally like that. Obviously, I've talked to him plenty of times, but doesn't seem like the guy that's going to ruffle too many feathers. He played last year with no guaranteed money on his contract, and, of course, he was banged up. So, maybe they're going through negotiations right now while they're going through OTAs as well, but he's definitely been there. So everything seems good on that front. And, if they do come up with a contract extension or give him some guaranteed money, which I think that they should, but they don't have to. Again, it's a new staff. They didn't bring him in. Everyone's at that got to prove it type point. So thanks so much for that text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Is Raider on Twitter. He's calling to talk about the hype, the Kool-Aid, the excitement level of the team, and wanted to focus in on the second-year guy in JPJ. Here's Is Raider.
What up, Q? It's Iz Rosas. Go by Iz Raider on Twitter, or X. Just calling in. I grew up on the Bay Area, now in Phoenix. I just want to talk about what we've been pretty much every call that you mentioned, you throw in there, has mentioned, either don't get too high, don't drink the Kool-Aid, So I just want to be on the side of the optimistic where it's it's looking good. I know I called in before. I know you get a lot of calls. I want to say that I'm excited how Jackson Powers, man, his mentality just coming off with that good year transition to center. How he mentions how after that he felt so great, and we saw it on tape, man. This guy, he's playing the position that he goes off on. He even mentions on the Rush podcast how he's coming from a winning environment growing up from high school and college. All that to being said, I just love that they take that mentality to the Raiders. And I know we had players in the past where they're winners too, but I don't know, man. It just feels different. Like these guys, they like Max Crosby. Every time he talks, he always has his goal is Super Bowl, man. He has his goal, and not just that, to win it, So those goals that they place in themselves, it's just great to hear. And what I think too, it's crazy how a lot of our players, like our recent players, they all have achievements. And I mentioned before how Jackson Powers, man, he mentions how he won the Remington and Jack Bett winning that Senior Bowl MVP. I mean, it's not really looked up on, but I mean, I'll take it. It's good stuff to see and hear. And even Genty, he got robbed from the Heisman. I know you mentioned how you still would give Hunter the Heisman, but come on, man. Genty is he's one of a kind, man. If just a few yards away to beat the record, you know what I'm saying? So just all that I see, and I'm excited for, man. So pretty much it. I just want to keep just pushing the optimistic side of our Raider fans and keep our hype up. I know a lot of you guys have called in and said don't get too hyped up, but I want to be one of those that encourages us to keep having faith in these guys, man. I mean, I know it's your job, but a lot of these guys, like I mentioned earlier, Crosby, Genty, Powers, even Genty, when he got drafted, he goes straight to the Raider logo, and he's excited. So I'll say him too. You got a lot of these players that are excited to not just win but play. So that's pretty much it, man. Go Raiders!
Is Raider, thanks so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And he said, forget chilling and forget not trying to get too hype. My man said, I'm leaning all the way into the hype. Let's get all fired up, right? And I love the point that you bring up about JPJ, though. It's a great one, right? He should be much more effective this season as a full-time center. That's the position he wanted. He told Antonio Pierce that when they needed a center, he was going to be the guy. He introduced himself to Ashton Genty as your starting center. Yeah, he's fired up about that, and as he should. He's going to be one of those guys. It's funny, me and my dad were just talking about JPJ on Saturday when I was leaving the barbershop. He was asking about him, and I was like, man, the dude's a fan favorite already. And it's not too often that you are, you're a big fan of a center or an offensive lineman, right? Normally when you don't talk about offensive linemen, that's a good thing. But JPJ is that guy because he absolutely plays like a Raider, plays, to the whistle, through the whistle. There's times that they have to tell this dude, and this is what I rather like. I like guys like this. You have to tell him to calm down as opposed to urge him to get better. Right? I rather tell someone all the time, like, hey, man, you need to chill a little bit, or hey, man, pull it back a little bit, as opposed to, can I get something from you? Come on, man, I need some energy. Give me something, man. I much rather tell a dude to chill than have to try to force a guy to show some kind of emotion and get fired up or whatever. So that's who he is through and through, man. So, yeah, I'm excited about JPJ and what he does as a second-year guy, fully healthy, center, back to his normal position, should be very effective for the Raiders offensive line. Now they just got to figure out the guards. Left guard, right guard. Who are those guys going to be? Obviously, there's going to be competition at that spot. Up next, got a text from Raider Mark in the 530. Says, hey, Q, it's Raider Mark from the 530. Text you from beautiful Anderson, California. Bo from the 530, you know where I'm at, Sacktown Raider. I see Jordan from Oregon. I know you're up the way. Can't thank you, Q, enough for giving us this platform to create this community. Thanks by giving us a voice. Thank you. Now for the question for you and Raider Nation. With this being the most positive time of the season, as usual, new head coach, a new general manager, relying on the possibilities of a good draft, offense with a new coordinator, what is the least number of games that this team could win? I'm hearing 8 wins. I'm hearing 10 wins in a very tough division that the Raiders were shut out of last season. I can't really see KC, Denver, or the Chargers taking that far of a step back in the division when all they had was a prove-it season the year before. My bottom line is 6 wins. Raider Nation, be prepared for a long December. Let's hear what you got to say, Raider Nation. Thanks again, Q, for everything you do. Thanks, Ari. And you shout out to your families for giving us time with you. Just win, baby. Raider Mark from the 530. Thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, look, six wins, I could see that. But Pete Carroll, and this is where I started when Pete Carroll was hired, I started saying, 7 wins. If you just look at his track record, he's going to get you 7 wins. He never has a season where he has less than 7 wins. So the Raiders were at 4 last year. Looking at the schedule, I don't think it's that difficult. I know there's the conversation about the rest or not rest or whatever the case may be. I think they're going to be fine. I could easily see 7, 8 wins, like I said. And, again, you can go back to the win total projection that Cynthia Freeland had. She had 7.4. So I think we're all around the same ballpark. I actually would be surprised if they only ended up with 6. I think that 8's very reasonable. And if they, get a ball to bounce their way or something to go their way in a very positive way, they could end up with 10. I'm not going to anticipate that. But I think that 8 is a really good first year for Pete Carroll. I do think that the Chiefs take a little bit of a step back, and we don't know how real the Chargers or even the Broncos were last year, right? They both got double-digit wins and made it to the playoffs, but, is that going to be what their standard is? Are they going to be that good? Is Justin Herbert going to take that next step? Like we talked about quarterbacks on Friday, and it's a lot of questions still. Is Bo Nix going to have a really good second year, or is he going to have a sophomore slump? I mean, there's a lot of questions to be had, but it's all really about the Raiders and just what they do. They don't have to worry about Kansas City, Denver. They don't have to worry about those guys, right? The Chargers. They have to worry about them. They have to go out there and handle their business. But to your point, they can't get shut out in the AFC West like they did a year ago. But thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Just got time for a couple more. This one's a lengthy call from Logan from PA, calling to talk about negativity in the media when it comes to the Raiders. Here's Logan in PA.
Hey, Q, this is Logan from PA. I wanted to call in and talk about some negativity from the media surrounding the Raiders, which is nothing new, and what I would consider lazy reporting. And it seems like somebody said this, and then everybody heard that and just ran with it, and you even talked about it on the show. Not that you agreed with it, but you had 2 different shows where we talked about it, and that is that the Raiders should have drafted Ashton Genty because they're not a Super Bowl contender, and for some reason you can't draft a running back in the first round unless you're a Super Bowl contender. I just don't understand this take that it's going to waste this rookie running back deal because the running backs only last so long. Last time I checked, Genty isn't on a 1-year deal. Right? We have this young man for 5 years on his rookie deal. And then he probably has another good 5 years after that, right? And I would say when we were up to pick at 6, probably over 90% of teams, he was the best player on their board. So I don't know where this notion came that you can't just draft the best player available unless your team's ready to win a Super Bowl. In the past, what would the Raiders have done? We would have drafted Shedeur Sanders at 6. And then we would have got criticized for that. And, they were talking about the Jaguars drafting Genty at 5 if they would have stuck and picked there. And I feel like they would have probably got a very good grade for that pick, and everybody would have said that was a great pick. I think that statistically, Geno Smith is probably a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence, and the Raiders probably have a better roster than the Jaguars, so I don't know why that's a good pick for the Jaguars, and that's helping out Trevor Lawrence, but it's a bad pick for the Raiders to help out Geno Smith. I don't understand that. This is the way that the 49ers built their team. They drafted a bunch of good players, and then they inserted a veteran quarterback that was just a normal quarterback. It was Jimmy Garoppolo. I would say Geno Smith is better than Jimmy Garoppolo also. So I don't understand why you can't build a really good football team and then insert a veteran quarterback, and then in the future when you find a rookie quarterback, you're inserting him into a very good team with a bunch of really good players. I actually think that's a very intelligent way to build a team. So I'm sure in 2-3 years from now, when we have a rookie quarterback, they'll be like, wow, he's walking into a great situation. He has Aston Genty and Brock Bowers. So I don't know why. I actually think that drafting a quarterback when your team sucks is the worst thing to do, because then you're wasting the rookie quarterback contract, like Drake May, Cam Ward. They're going to be 2-3 years into their deal before their roster's even able to compete. That is what I would say is a negative. You should build the team first before you draft a really good quarterback, unless it's like a Drake May, you just can't pass on it.
Logan, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate you. And yeah, I don't think the Genty pick was a bad pick at all. I know that, there's a lot of conversation that we've had here on the show, others have had about the Raiders maximizing Genty's ability, and I think that they will, and we gave many reasons why. I know there's a few out there in the media that still question that pick, but you're right. Jacksonville was going to pick him at number 5. If they hadn't made that trade for Travis Hunter to get up to number 2, they were taking him at 5. And even when we had the mock draft that we were doing at the radio station, and at 5 they picked Genty, I was like, whoa. I was kind of speechless at that time. I remember I brought it back to the podcast, and we talked about it the next day. It was like, whoa, what's really going on? So I think it was a great pick, right? And that's why when we were doing the mock draft here on the Locked On Podcast Network, that's why I picked Genty at 6. Because it just made all the sense in the world. Like, I felt like I even overthought it. I was thinking going back to offensive lineman, going to Genty, offensive line. You know what I mean? I was going back and forth, and I even was like, you know what? Just make the easy pick. The easy pick, the smart pick, just go do it. So that was just me overthinking it. But to be honest, Logan, I think that the media has been pretty good. I don't think there's been a lot of negativity when it comes to the Raiders, and that's why I continue to bring all the sound that I can get from the national media, from the outside, to let it be known that, hey, that narrative that was there is not really that narrative, right? That lazy reporting that you're talking about, it's not really going on anymore, which is a good thing, I think. And now it's just time for the Raiders to go out there and prove exactly who they are. But thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. We'll close out with a quick text from Big G from Arizona. It says, hey, Q, Big G in Arizona, is Ramsey worth bringing to the Raiders? I'm not questioning his talent, but his drama. Is he going to be a problem, or can Pete Carroll control that? I would love to have him on the roster. Go Raiders. That's Big G from Arizona. That's one of the big questions, Big G. And I know Pete Carroll likes to work with young guys, so maybe that's something that they're not even thinking about. They might look at it and say, yeah, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? Don't really want to deal with him. And, the character thing. Character has been shown that from John Spytek and Pete Carroll is a big deal. And it's funny because when you look back at those Seattle Seahawks teams that won championships, we always used to say car thieves and choir boys, right? But this staff, led by John Spytek, doing the same thing that they did in Tampa Bay under Jason Light, really has focused in on character guys. They really have. And that's something that, doing all my due diligence on all the players that they brought in, every single one of them to a T, great human, loves football, great human, right? And so a lot of times, a lot of coaches and a lot of teams, that's not really a big factor. That's not for me to judge. But this obviously, that means a lot to John Spytek and company, and that's the same thing they did in Tampa Bay. And I'm good with that. If that's your policy, awesome. Right? Go ahead and make it happen. That's great, right? Go out there and represent. However you build your team, that is how you build your team. You're the GM, you're the head coach, ownership, whatever you prioritize is what you need to prioritize as an organization. And the Raiders have shown exactly what they have prioritized. So we'll see. Jalen Ramsey might be a guy they look at and say thanks, but no thanks. He very well could. And then again, they might not think that they need a guy. They might feel very comfortable with who they have right now currently in the room. But thanks so much for that text. I definitely appreciate you. And that's going to do it for today's show. Again, hopefully everyone is having a fantastic Memorial Day. Hopefully everyone remembers the reason why we have this day, Memorial Day. Again, shout out to all the servicemen and servicewomen out there. I know this is not Veterans Day. I get that. And I know what Memorial Day is all about, but I definitely never want to stop thinking about the current servicemen and servicewomen as well. Definitely really appreciate you. You know, the funny thing, as we close out the show, I was watching on Sunday, I was watching North Carolina and Clemson college baseball. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I got a problem. I get it. But the point is, in the middle of the 6th inning, they did this thing that I thought was really cool, that all the, like the veterans, everyone who served the country, they had them stand up. And that's, that's something that's normal at a lot of different venues. Allegiant Stadium does it all the time. There'll be a part of the game where they say, hey, if you've ever served the country, stand up and, salute to service, and it's awesome. Well, the baseball players from both Clemson and North Carolina walked into the stands, took their hat off, and shook every one of their hands. That everyone that stood up, that was someone who, who served the country at some point. They were standing there, and then the players walked through the stands and shook their hand. I thought that was so cool. And obviously, I can't shake your hand from through the show, through the YouTube or the stereo or whatever. But I can thank you. So again, definitely salute to all the servicemen and servicewomen. And again, I thought that was really cool. Shout out to North Carolina and Clemson. A little college baseball action I was watching over the weekend, and they had that nice salute to service. So have a fantastic day. We'll be back tomorrow on more news and notes, more calls and texts, plus a whole lot more. You know how we roll here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.